Good evening, everyone. Delighted to have you with us at Water.
Thank you.
We'll start at the 7:30 hour on the East Coast, and in the meantime, you can settle in and get comfortable for your meditation. So lovely to see all of you. Janet Rosano, you're a welcome face tonight.
Thank you.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
I've been busy.
I know you've been doing good work. I know I follow you. I follow your work. You've been doing it for a long time, and it's great. So great to have all of you with us. It feels like we just did this, didn't we?
Yes.
It was just last Monday.
We did.
Sort of an anomaly in water programming, because usually things are 3 to 4 weeks apart. And for those of you who weren't here, we did meet last week at the same hour because of some scheduling here internal to Water's calendar. So it was a busy month.
And then Tuesday and Wednesday.
That's right. But wasn't it all amazing?
Yes. Yeah.
It was all amazing. Wednesday was amazing. We had Elizabeth Davis and Phyllis Sagano on the Synod, which was really a very interesting conversation.
Yes,
and Diana,
it was.
You folks had a conversation on, had a liturgy on Tuesday night. So it was just a full week. We can't keep that up, I'm afraid.
Nor can we.
No, it couldn't happen again. But things, you have to be flexible. We didn't want to miss anything. We didn't want to miss a session of any of the 3 programs. So we decided to just clump them all at the end of the month when we were away for a week and all kinds of other things. So anyway. Looks like people are still getting on, so give it another couple seconds. Welcome and good evening to everyone. This is the second meditation of 2025, and we are here with Cynthia Tootle tonight. I'm Mary Hunt from Water. I'm here with my colleagues Magdalena and Wed, who are handling the IT. These are my colleagues from the program Irene from Germany, and they are invaluable, have made themselves invaluable in a very short period of time at the Water office. So thanks to them, we'll have a smooth sail, I think, tonight. At times like this, it's wonderful to have a wise and experienced spiritual guide as we join in silence to contemplate the challenges of our day. And last week with Brad Lutz and this week with Cynthia Tootle, we have exactly those wise and experienced spiritual guides. So I thank you both. I want to begin with a special note of thanks to our Canadian friends, whom we cherish and respect here in the U.S. And I want you to accept my apology on behalf of the U.S. I have deputized myself, self-appointed representative, but nonetheless, I think I speak for millions of people in my country. I want to apologize for the reckless, disrespectful, and unwarranted words and deeds of the U.S. president with regard to you, our dear friends in Canada. Dear neighbors to the north, your sovereignty is sacred, your culture enviable. Let our time together tonight as water be a countersign to such hideous dealings. Last month, which was really last week, our friend Brad Lutz focused on finding a cure for loneliness. He urged us toward solitude, which many people, even those in deeply supportive relationships with families and community galore, need to balance. You can review this insightful presentation on our website under Water Programs and then go to Meditations and you'll find Brad Lutz's presentation. Brad, thanks again. Let us begin then, as we always do, with a land acknowledgement. This is something that we've incorporated into our programs to remind ourselves of why we do what we do and what we need to do more of, given the systemic injustice that Indigenous and other people of color face in this country. A land acknowledgement is a beginning, not an end, a promise, not a token. We at Water are on Indigenous land in Silver Spring, Maryland. This is the traditional and contemporary land of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples. We acknowledge the trauma and the injustice toward Indigenous peoples and others of color that is deep in U.S. culture and history. We join in efforts to eradicate it and to make reparations for the genocide involved. Water's work is aimed at all points to bring about social justice. I invite you to just take a moment of silence with me to consider the Native people on whose land you sit. And please feel free to list them in the chat as a way to honor them and to bring them more clearly into your consciousness. Thank you. And now let me say a word, especially for those who are new, and a special welcome to those who are new tonight. Our presenter offers something brief. This is format. 7 to 8 minutes to spark your contemplation. And then we spend about 22 minutes in silence together. You'll listen for the gong. The gong will sound like this. Listen for the gong that will begin our period of meditation. And after the silence, we'll open the floor with a ring of the gong again so that we can share in conversation after the time of meditation. During that time, please feel free to turn off your video and enjoy the image of Kuan Yin that will be on the screen tonight. Meditate as you will. We prescribe nothing here. Simply the way you find your center, your breath, your focus, that's up to you. And please mute your phone, or at this point your computer, until it's time to share after the meditation, at which point we'll give you instructions about coming back into the conversation. Meanwhile, the Reverend Cynthia Tootle will present tonight, and she is Water's nearest neighbor. And by that, I mean she lives scant blocks from the Water office. Cynthia is an expert on goddesses. She picks one each month. She studies it. She focuses on it. She listens to the goddess. And sometimes she channels the messages that the goddesses give to her. Cynthia is an engineer by training and vocation. Perhaps not what you would expect of someone channeling goddesses, but that's the way it is. She had a long and successful career with the federal government, and I'm betting today she's glad that that's behind her. Now, in retirement, she has embraced her calling to the ministry at the Tacoma Metaphysical Chapel, where both her intellectual and pastoral skills are more than welcome. I watched a recent sermon she gave, and I was struck by her ability to get just the right chord at the right time. And I was also struck by how dear she is to the members of that community. Equally so here, Cynthia, at a time when more than ever we need the compassion with which Kuan Yin is associated, and we need her presence. The wisdom you bring to us is very welcome. Thank you in advance.
So good evening, everyone. I am very honored to be speaking to you tonight. And it's interesting to me that Kuan Yin, who is, as you can see, always in my sphere, specifically came to me to be presented to you tonight. Kuan Yin is the Chinese Buddhist goddess of compassion. And I have learned about what divine compassion is through my study of her. And one of the most profound lessons was a prayer called Kuan Yin's Prayer for the Abuser, which she channeled. And I don't know what woman wrote that down, but I have found it the very clear message of what divine compassion means. And I've asked Mary and the water staff to put that in the notes. But while that is an amazing source of contemplation, I realize for this audience, most of you have spent your lives in compassion, have spent your life in seeing and fulfilling needs of other people. But at this very moment, something else is needed for you to hear. Now, I called her a goddess. And if any of you've studied Buddhism, you know that she isn't a goddess. She's what's called a bodhisattva, which means she was a human woman that studied and steeped herself in her spiritual practices and reached enlightenment. At that moment, she could have left this sphere of life and rebirth and pain and gone on. But as she was prepared to do that, she heard a cry for help. And she chose not to go. Her name means she who hears the cries of the earth. And she made a vow that she would not leave until every sentient being reached enlightenment and could go with her. When I first heard that, it moved me to tears. She has promised to stay with us. And at this particular time, when things are so insane, there is something particularly beautiful about becoming aware of her presence with us. And it's interesting because I found a reading and I had stuck this piece of paper with this reading in actually the book I wrote. And I was looking it up in that book for something to give to someone else. And I saw this and I thought, oh, gee, this is just what I should read. And I sort of, and the next day I said, gee, I wonder where this came from. So I opened it up and lo and behold, it is a message from the Center for Women of Earth and Divine, who sent it to Mary and Diane, who sent it to me with a note, oh, we think you might like this. So after that whole big long sent, it came to me that this was perfectly here and present for you. It is a quote from a book called An Annual of the Sixth Day by Laura Vargas. And I will read it to you twice so you can get a chance to hear the words. Of the many Buddhas, I love best the girl who would not leave the cycle of pain before anyone else. It is not the captain declining to be saved on a sinking ship, who may just be riding his chain out of sight. She is on the brink of never being hurt again, but pauses to say, all of us, every blade of grass. She chooses to live in the tumble of souls through time. Perhaps she sees spring in every country. talks quietly with the farm women while helping to lay seed. Our hearts are a storm she trembles at. I picture her leaning on a tree or humming or joining a volleyball game on the Santa Monica beach. Her skin shines with sweat. The others might not know how to notice what she does to them. She's not a fish or a bee, is not pity or thirst. She could go, but here she is. Of the many Buddhas, I best love the girl who would not leave the cycle of pain before anyone else. It is not the captain declining to be saved on a sinking ship, who may just be want to ride a chain out of sight. She is on the brink of never being heard again, but pauses to say, all of us, every blade of glass. She chooses to live in the tumble of souls through time, perhaps seeing spring in every country. She quietly talks with farm women while helping to lay seed. Or our hearts are a storm she trembles at. I picture her leaning on a tree or humming or joining a volleyball game on Santa Monica beach. Her skin shines with sweat. Others may not know how to notice what she does to them. She's not a fish or a bee, is not pity or thirst. She could go, but here she is.
Thank you, Cynthia Tootle. Thank you, Kuan Yin, Bodhisattva of compassion, for being with us and staying with us. We move now to our meditation. Enjoy the 22 minutes of silence together. Good evening again to everyone, and thank you very much for your participation in the communal silence. And the special thanks I want to give is really to Cynthia Tootle and to her companion, the Goddess Kuan Yin. For those who weren't here at the very beginning when Cynthia made her presentation, we will make sure that you get that in the notes, but just to know that she talked about Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, as not only bringing us that virtue, but also promising her presence with all sentient beings on earth to the last blade of grass, and not leaving us until all can go with her into enlightenment. Very moving, Cynthia. Thank you. The floor is open now for comments. I invite you to use the raise hands button at the bottom of the page, which is on where it says react. There's a little heart getting ready for Valentine's Day, and you can react by raising your hand as I will demonstrate. And once you raise your hand, when you finish speaking, you can lower your hand. So that's how it works. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that and you simply want to make a comment, we'll keep an eye on the screen as well, and you can wave your front paw in this fashion that will give us a sense that you want to speak. So don't let the technology defeat you if, in fact, you'd like to make a comment. Please make your comments brief. State your name, maybe where you're from, and there are lots of us tonight, so please make a brief comment, but feel free to do so. We want to hear your wisdom based on what we've been experiencing in our meditation. So the floor is open, and we'll take the first person as soon as my hand goes up. Yes, Heather, please go ahead. And don't forget to unmute yourselves. Heather,
I'm
go ahead,
Heather.
please.
I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This is part of a much longer, but I'll only read a little bit. Compassion isn't the soft and gracious beauty of Kuan Yin. It's the structure within, honed armor covered with the finest of silk. Who would fear the serenity? We are the ones who've, and I'll just stop there. It's part of a longer, but I just had this image of steel covered with this very delicate, beautiful silk, fine silk. Um, and she's not scary, but people should be afraid. Some people should be very afraid.
Thank you so much. Pamela Miller?
Good evening, everyone. I'm in Riverdale and a former intern at WATER. And Cynthia, nice to be in your company again. I was just thinking that to be told, I will never leave you, I will always be with you. I'm just reflecting on that with families who are being torn apart right now.
Thank you, Pamela. A message we need to hear. Yes, please, Patricia.
And I am in a suburb of Detroit, and meditation took me to the immigrants in Southwest Detroit, Michigan, where today they had a day of protest of no working. And we're right on the border of Canada. So my heart goes in those directions.
Thank you, Patricia. Our hearts go with you. Yes, please. Adrian? Unmute, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I was introduced to Kuan Yin many years ago by a Chinese friend, and I found at very different times great comfort in her and in her presence. And I remember introducing her to a friend who was dying, who didn't have much of a religious background, but she hung it up in front of her under a lamp, and she said that she just was so moved by her, and she felt that her presence was with her and helped her in her dying days. And I talked to her son later, who took that image that I had given to her, and he was praying with it through her death. So she's just of great comfort whenever you need her.
Thank you. Indeed. Kate Moody, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Kate from Alpine, California. And Cynthia, thank you for your presentation. And did I miss the prayer of compassion for the abuser?
I did not say it tonight, but I did ask Water to put it in the notes, so you'll receive it.
Okay, I'll be glad to experience that. Something I need right now is
Well,
compassion.
it is a totally amazing experience to read that for the first time. So I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I think, like you, I came thinking that I was going to be focusing on compassion, and Cynthia very wisely, I think, in the moment, changed it up for us to this abiding presence, which certainly is what compassion is as well. But the abiding presence of Kuan Yin. And it also made me think, if I may indulge for a moment, it made me think of when I first came in contact with Kuan Yin. It was in China. I had adopted a baby, and we took the baby to the temple to be blessed by Kuan Yin. It was the temple of Kuan Yin. We took the baby, and the monks prayed so long and so fervently for our baby that we had to give her an orange to kind of keep her, something to keep her a little bit busy. But as you present this, Cynthia, I feel like that was an experience of Kuan Yin, and she has never left us, and we will never leave our family. So thank you. The floor is open. Yes, Virginia Day, please. Unmute.
Thank you. I was so moved, Cynthia, by your presentation, and that beautiful line. She could go, but here she is. And for those of us who are in healthcare or ministry, or mothers with babies, or women taking care of their in-laws or their parents, particularly when they're near death, we've stayed, we tried to stay. And I expressed my gratitude for the times that I had been able to, either with patients or with family. But I also pray to her to allow us to forgive ourselves when we haven't been able to stay for whatever reason, just fatigue, exhaustion, other responsibilities, but that she also holds compassion for us. When we think maybe we should have done more, stayed longer, if we just, waited a little longer or come back. But for anyone who has had that experience, without blaming ourselves, asking for her compassion when maybe we hadn't been able to stay as long. So I offer that, and gratitude, Cynthia.
Thank you, Virginia. Very helpful. Someone else who might like to offer an insight or a comment? Yes, Janet Rosano, please.
Maybe this is just a synchronicity, not an in-depth thought, but I'm helping to prepare for the funeral of one of our sisters who died last weekend. And her motto was, "I am with you always." So for me, it just touched into the meditation today of Kuan Yin, Jesus, always with us.
Thank you, Janet, and sorry for the loss for you and for your Mercy community. Anyone else before we come to a close this evening? Who else would like to share? Feel free. Cynthia, would you have any closing comment you'd like to make?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for being invited to share this with you all. It is my ministry to do that, and I appreciated you all as a group of compassionate people. But in this rather unique time, being very aware how important it's been for me to be aware of the goddess. And my motto for the year is, I practice radical acceptance and irrational optimism and devote myself to peace. So some part of my sense of what I need to do that is to stay aware of the goddess being with me and channeled through me. So my ability to have compassion to everybody is there, because I feel like that's what I can do most importantly for the world right now. But I gotta say that radical acceptance is quite a challenge these days, and I'm very happy um, to feel the sense of support, that there are these wonderful people around the world like you all that are part of that and are sharing a passion for the world. And I'm really pleased tonight to be among you.
Thank you. I say the same to you. Really, just a rich offering tonight. Thank you so very, very much. Anybody else before we close? I'd like to, I don't want to leave anybody out who has something they'd like to add. Yes, please, Teresa.
I just in case it feels like, wouldn't it have been wonderful if more people said things? I just find being here quietly in front of this beautiful screen of all these lovely faces, the silence is beautiful as well as the comments.
Thank you so much. That feels very right. Anybody, just in case we don't like to send people off with something they still want to share, but I'm with you. The silence is really very full tonight. Let me turn then to the several announcements. One is that we will reconvene on March the 3rd, which will be a Monday night, and Lillian Lewis, who is a popular presenter among us, will be making an offering then. I'm not sure the topic is yet, but she never fails to amaze. I'd also like to announce other programs, one of which is this Sunday, February the 9th, which will be Holding the Line, Expanding the Circle, Women and LGBTIQA Persons' Rights in a Time of Repression. This is a special program that we do 4 times a year, WATER and the Women of Dignity. And we're going to focus on the current threats to women's and queer people's lives, especially the products of the new executive orders. And this will be a time to learn and to pray and to commit in very troubling times. So it'll be at 11:30 on Sunday morning, and it's open to all lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer women, as well as those identifying as non-binary or gender expansive, and of course all of our women friends. So it's it's always a very good time with our Dignity friends, and I think an important time right now to look at these executive orders, to know what's coming, and to be able to help not only ourselves but one another. And then on Tuesday, February the 18th at 7:30 p.m., Diane New and the Water community will be sharing love in difficult times. That will be their theme, kind of around the Valentine's holiday, to celebrate each other and to acknowledge our work during uncertain and difficult times, kindling the light of love so it may shine brighter than our worries and our angst. So that's something to look forward to. And then something I'm particularly excited about is going to be on the 19th. That will be the Water Talk on February 19th at 1 o'clock. These are all Eastern time. And we're going to have with us one of, in my view, one of the great women of our time, Charlotte Bunch. Charlotte Bunch, who's a lesbian feminist activist with religious roots. And we'll be in conversation, Charlotte and I, about lesbian feminism and its intersections with religion. Charlotte Bunch, for those of you who don't know, is one of the great global feminist leaders, someone who has had an enormous impact and is trusted around the world, even as an American, for her work in LGBTQ things, on women's issues. She was part of the Furies Collective here in Washington years ago. And she now has turned 80, and she has a lot to share from her many years of activism. And little known fact about Charlotte Bunch is that she was part of the Methodist Family of the Year from New Mexico when she was a young person, and really got her start in her own activism. And I'm talking about global activism. She got her start through the student movement, through the World Student Christian Federation and the Methodist student movement. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see one of the great leaders of a justice movement in our world to have started and have roots deep in religion. So very interesting. And then simply to note that, backed by popular demand, please advise your networks. The Rosemary Ganley Essay Contest is being launched again this week at WATER. You can write 650 words, and if you are one of the top 3, you get $650. Feminist work in religion and social change is accomplished in many ways, not the least of which is through writing. So we through a generous donor, have set up this essay contest in the style of our dear Rosemary Ganley, who many of you know from this group and from others in WATER. Peterborough, Ontario feminist, recently named to the Order of Canada. She has a weekly column in the Peterborough Examiner. She's in her late 80s and sharp as a tack, and she will be helping us to look at these essays and make a decision as to which 3 we like or think express best our feminists changing the world 650 words at a time, as we call the contest. And it's the style of Rosemary Ganley, a light touch, a bit of humor, substantive research and analysis, and voila, there you have 650 words on something very important to you. So we'll get more information out to you about that very shortly. So all of these programs at WATER are free and open. Donations are welcome and needed. But as we say every week, we try to socialize resources so those who can donate do so, and they make WATER programs available to those who might not be able to or who choose not to. So we're grateful to the many friends who support our work, and we always say that if we share among us, there's enough. And I think in our world tonight, maybe that mantra ought to be repeated more than once. If we share among us, there's enough. And I hope that may have some spillover value into a wider world. So with that, I'm closing the official part of the program with a final thanks to Cynthia Tootle for bringing us not only your dear Kuan Yin, who I see over your over what would be your right shoulder, to the left of you, behind you, and thank you for your insights and for bringing her with us and reminding us of her presence. I feel very comforted by that, Cynthia, at a time, especially when we worked last week with Brad about loneliness. Goodness, how to be well accompanied, and even in our solitude, Kuan Yin is there. So thank you all. Feel free to stay on and chat. Be safe, be well, be compassionate, and be present. So with that, I say adieu.